There are machines in American history so scarce, so elusive, that even seasoned collectors question whether they truly exist. These are the forgotten titans, built in whispers, lost in time, and rediscovered only as legend. Today, we reveal 20 muscle cars so rare they feel almost like myth. The 1966 Ford Fairlane 500R Code carried the kind of quiet force that Detroit rarely attempted twice. Its mid-size body looked almost modest at first glance, but the shape was sharpened with intention, a clean beltline, a long hood, and a stance that hinted at something powerful resting beneath the steel. Ford had spent years refining the Fairlane from its early full-size form, and by this point it had become a platform ready for serious muscle. The heart of the R Code was the 427 cubic inch Cobra V8, an engine taken straight from Ford's most ambitious performance efforts. Fed by a pair of Holley carburetors, it was said to deliver around 425 horsepower, enough for period testers to claim speeds past 130 miles an hour when conditions were right. A lift-off fiberglass hood kept weight down, front disc brakes helped tame the speed, and the cabin was stripped of anything unnecessary, even the radio, so the driver could feel every beat of that big block. Only 57 Fairlane R Codes were ever built, a number so small that many enthusiasts have never seen one outside old photographs. A few resurfaced at Florida auction blocks decades later, where prices climbed deep into the six-figure range for the rare survivors. If legends like this still move you, let American Muscle Soul ride with you by tapping subscribe and keeping this road alive. The 1963 Chevrolet Impala Z11 moved through its era like a rumor that only racers truly understood. At a distance, it looked like any full-size Chevy cruising American streets, but once the light turned green, its purpose became clear. Chevrolet had stripped weight wherever possible, trading steel for aluminum on the hood, the fenders, the bumpers, even the brackets that held them in place. Inside, the heater, the radio, and every ounce of sound deadening were gone, leaving only the echoes of a machine built for Sunday afternoons at the drag strip. Its 427 cubic inch W Series engine breathed through dual 4-barrel carburetors, a combination that Chevrolet claimed made around 430 horsepower, though seasoned drivers insisted the truth lived far higher. Court records from those early superstock battles tell stories of quarter-mile runs so quick they seemed to bend the rules of a full-size car. One of the most famous racers, the old reliable Impala, spent those years collecting victories and reshaping what fans believed a sedan could do. Only 57 Z11s were ever built, and only a handful survived the decades, each now commanding prices deep into the six-figure range. If this rare legend sparks something in you, tell me in the comments. Does the Z11 feel like a forgotten giant, or a myth that finally steps back into the light? The 1967 Dodge Coronet W023 was built like a quiet weapon, a mid-size body hiding the kind of intent usually reserved for pure race cars. Under the plain white paint, Dodge trimmed away anything that did not help at the drag strip. The battery moved to the trunk to shift weight over the rear axle. The heater and radio disappeared. Many cars lost their rear seats, leaving only a thin carpet and a bench up front, so the driver and that big engine could do their work without distraction. The heart of this machine was the 426 cubic inch Hemi, the fearsome race-bred V8 that Mopar had been sharpening through the middle years of the decade. Officially, it was rated around 425 horsepower, but racers who lived with these cars spoke of a surge far stronger than the brochure suggested. The Coronet launched with a violence that pushed its slicks into the pavement and carried the car through the quarter mile in a way no ordinary street machine could match. Only about 55 W023 Coronets were built, just enough to satisfy the rulemakers who governed American drag racing. Many were used hard, broken, rebuilt, and lost again in the noise of weekend competition. The few that survived, often with faded paint and old track stickers, feel less like old Dodges now, and more like artifacts from a moment when Detroit quietly built myths and sent them straight to the starting line. The Plymouth Hemi Cuda convertible of 1970 and 1971 lives in a territory few machines ever reach. A place where rarity turns into something close to legend. The body followed the wide and low lines of the new E-body design, a shape that looked ready to pounce even when the top was folded down. Plymouth offered the convertible layout to bring a bit of sun and wind into its performance line, but almost no one stepped up to order a Hemi beneath that open sky, making the survivors feel more mythical than mechanical. At the center of this machine rested the 426 cubic inch Hemi, the same iron heart that powered Plymouth through some of the fiercest years of American muscle. On the quarter mile, a Hemi-powered Cuda was known to break into the low 13-second range, and on a long enough stretch of road, it could push well past 130 miles an hour. Yet almost none of that mattered to buyers at the time, because the price sat shoulder to shoulder with the Boss 429 and the Shelby performance cars of the era, turning this convertible into a rare indulgence rather than a common sight. Only a handful were ever built, so few that collectors argue over the exact count even today. One wandered overseas for decades before finding its way back home, a journey that only deepened its mystique. Machines like this do not simply survive. They drift through history like whispers, appearing just long enough to remind us how close myth and reality can sometimes feel. The 1970 Chevrolet Chevelle SS 454 LS6 was never meant to be subtle. It arrived in a time when Detroit still believed brute force could solve almost anything, and Chevrolet poured that belief into a big block that felt more like a clenched fist than a simple engine. The shape carried the familiar Coke bottle curve, wide under the shoulders, low in its stance, with a cowl induction hood that lifted just enough to hint at the storm beneath the steel. Inside that body waited the 454 cubic inch heart, a motor Chevrolet rated at 450 horsepower, but whispered to push far beyond that number when the night was cool and the road was long. A hard launch in one of these cars could pull the world backward, and a quarter mile passed in the low 13-second range when driven by someone who understood what they were holding. The LS6 surged toward the far side of 130 miles an hour with a confidence few street machines could match. Although thousands were built, the survivors in true specification have become rare in a different way. Many were raced, wrecked, or modified into something unrecognizable, leaving only a small portion that still carry their original fire. And if the Chevelle LS6 still stirs something in you after all these years, leave number 5 below so I know you are still riding with these legends, one story at a time. The 1971 Pontiac GTO Judge convertible holds its own kind of silence in the story of American muscle, the kind that follows a machine built in such small traces that even seasoned collectors speak of it carefully. Pontiac had shaped the Judge into a bright and rebellious symbol only a few years earlier, yet when the final season arrived, the convertible slipped through the factory doors, in numbers so low that the records themselves feel more like shadows than facts. What we do know is simple. Only a handful left the line, and even fewer survived the long road that followed. Beneath its wide fenders and crisp lines lived the 400 cubic inch V8, a motor that carried Pontiac's proudest engineering of the day. The rating hovered in the mid-300 horsepower range, strong enough to hold its place in the shrinking world of high performance, as insurance costs and new regulations pressed against every automaker. The convertible layout gave the Judge a different voice, softer in the wind, yet still carrying the weight of Pontiac's performance heritage. This was the final year for the Judge nameplate, and the open-top version became rarer with each passing decade. Many vanished, some were rebuilt beyond recognition, and a precious few remain, treasured as glimpses into Pontiac's last bold stand. Machines like this do not shout their history. They let the rarity speak for them, one survivor at a time. The 1969 Chevrolet Corvette ZL1 belonged to a very small circle of machines born with racing in their bones. Chevrolet had already reshaped the Corvette the year before, giving it the long nose, short deck silhouette that defined the new generation. But underneath that dramatic shell, the ZL1 carried something far more significant than sheet metal. It was fitted with an all-aluminum 427 cubic inch engine developed for competition, a power plant that blurred the line between a factory car and a pure racing experiment. The official records never boasted wild numbers. Chevrolet kept its ratings conservative, as it had done with the fierce L88 engine before it. Yet the character of the ZL1 was unmistakable. The throttle brought a sharp, immediate surge, the kind that spoke of lightweight internals and an engine block designed to endure the punishment of long, unforgiving straights. Period accounts described it as one of the most potent Corvettes ever to leave a showroom, even if the factory sheets never called attention to the truth hiding beneath the hood. What makes the ZL1 feel almost mythical is not a single number, but its scarcity. Only a very small handful were assembled, and even fewer ever reached private owners. Many stayed within Chevrolet, or in the hands of racers, leaving only rare survivors to carry the story forward. Today, the ZL1 stands as a quiet reminder of the brief moment when a major American automaker dared to let a race engine slip onto public roads, leaving behind a legend that time has only sharpened. The stories surrounding the Dodge Coronet RT Hemi convertibles of 1967 and 1970 drift through muscle car history like smoke that never settles in one place. Official records from Dodge never made a clear declaration that open-top RT Hemis were built in any confirmed number, yet traces of them appear in scattered documents, old photographs, and the memories of collectors who swear they saw one in the early years before it vanished again. In a world where paperwork was not always preserved, and special orders could slip quietly through the system, these machines live in the space between what is proven and what might have been. What we do know is that the RT package carried the 426 cubic inch Hemi, the fearsome engine that defined Mopar's performance era. That big block gave the Coronet a deep, unmistakable voice, a sound that rolled through the frame like thunder spreading across open country. Coupled with the clean, muscular lines of the B-body and the rare possibility of a folding top, the idea of a Hemi-powered Coronet convertible feels almost too bold for its time. Some collectors believe a few were produced, built quietly for customers or internal use, then lost as the years carried them from one owner to another. None of these cars stand easily in the light, and perhaps that is what gives them power. Their stories remain incomplete, half-hidden, lingering on the edge of myth, reminding us that not every legend comes with a neat set of records to prove it ever existed. The 1967 Shelby Cobra Supersnake sits in a strange corner of American performance history, a place where the line between fact and legend becomes thin enough to question. Shelby had already stunned the world with the 427 cubic inch Cobra, a machine so raw that most drivers never discovered its limits. But somewhere within the Shelby workshops, an even more extreme version was born, built not for catalogs or dealership brochures, but for those brief moments when the company wanted to show just how far the idea of a Cobra could be pushed. The Supersnake carried the same aluminum big block at its core, tuned with the kind of intent that belonged more to competition than to the open road. Period accounts speak of brutal acceleration, a throttle that felt like a switch, and a power curve that arrived with almost no warning. None of these impressions were ever matched with official numbers, because Shelby never published them. That silence only fed the mystique, allowing owners, racers, and bystanders to fill in the blanks with memories that grew larger each time the story was told. The scarcity of verified Supersnake chassis has only deepened its aura. Very few were assembled, and fewer still survived the years that followed. Today the car exists less as a neatly documented model and more as a whispered chapter in the broader Cobra mythos. It stands as a reminder that not every legend needs paperwork. Some remain powerful precisely because so much of their story is carried only by those who were there to witness the thunder. The 1967 Shelby Mustang GT 500 Supersnake occupies a strange space in the landscape of American muscle, a place where fact and legend lean so close together that even seasoned historians hesitate before drawing a line between them. What we do know is that Shelby, in those years, was willing to follow an idea farther than most manufacturers dared. The standard GT500 was already a force, But somewhere along the way, a single experimental car was built to explore what happened when ambition outweighed caution. Stories say it carried a V8 with racing lineage, an engine shaped by the same philosophy that pushed Ford's endurance machines across long, unforgiving straights. No official sheets were printed, no glossy brochures produced. What survived were only impressions from those who saw the car run. The way its exhaust cracked like distant lightning, the way its front end lifted under full throttle, the way it seemed to stretch the road ahead rather than simply drive across it. Shelby never turned the Super Snake into a production model. Costs were high, the era was changing, and the experiment remained just that, a loan machine, built for demonstration rather than mass sale. The car resurfaced decades later, restored with care, its story pieced together from fragments and memories. It stands today as one of the rarest whispers in the Mustang world, proof that sometimes legends are born not from production numbers, but from the single moment a builder decides to see how far the dream can go. The 1964 Ford Fairlane Thunderbolt was never meant to live a quiet life. It arrived in an age when Detroit measured pride in quarter-mile trophies, and Ford needed a machine that could carry its banner back to the front of the drag strip. Built by the team at Dearborn Steel Tubing, the Thunderbolt was less a car for the street and more a purpose-shaped tool, forged to meet the brutal demands of NHRA competition. Its heart was the 427 cubic inch high riser, a big block designed to breathe hard at high revs through a pair of hungry Holley carburetors. When the driver dropped the clutch, the engine answered with a surge so immediate, it felt like the world snapped backward. On the quarter mile, the Thunderbolt could run deep into the 10-second range when the night was cool and the hands behind the wheel were steady. Ford trimmed the Fairlane's body to the bone. Fiberglass replaced steel on the hood and bumpers, plexiglass stood in for glass, and the interior carried only what was necessary to send the car hurtling down the strip. Just 100 Thunderbolts were built, each a bare-knuckled reminder of what happens when a manufacturer commits entirely to victory. If you are still with us on this long road of forgotten fire, drop a simple 11 below so we know you have not stepped away from the journey. The 1968 Dodge Charger RT Hemi J code carried an air of seriousness the moment it left the factory, as if it understood that only a few would ever share its path. Dodge had just reshaped the Charger into a wide-shouldered fastback with curves that caught the light in long strokes, and the company wanted a version strong enough to stand in the shrinking circle of true performance machines. The answer was the J code, the designation that meant a 426 cubic inch Hemi lived beneath the hood. The Hemi was a demanding engine, loud, restless, and happiest when the torque climbed high. It pushed the Charger through the quarter mile in the territory of low 13-second runs when the conditions were right, and independent tests of the time reported that the car could surge beyond 130 miles an hour. It was the kind of performance that required commitment, and many buyers hesitated, knowing the Hemi came with cost, complexity, and a reputation for shaking the weak parts loose. Only a small number of RT Hemi Chargers were built for that model year, barely enough to satisfy the enthusiasts who understood what the badge truly meant. Many were used hard on drag strips or vanished into street racing stories, and only a fraction remain as survivors. The J code stands today not just as a rare Charger, but as a reminder of an era when Detroit still built machines that asked something of their drivers and rewarded them with a thunder only a few would ever hear up close. The 1969 AMC Hurst SC Rambler was born out of a bold idea from the smallest of the American automakers, a moment when AMC refused to fade quietly behind the giants of Detroit. With limited resources and no sprawling high-performance program to lean on, the company turned to Hurst Performance, a name already carved into the world of drag racing. Together, they set out to build a machine that could give young drivers a real taste of power, without demanding the kind of money a Chevelle or a Mach 1 required. A lightweight Rambler body became the canvas, and into it, AMC dropped the 400-cubed V8. A strong heart rated in the low 300 horsepower range. A Hurst shifter sat at the driver's right hand, sharp and mechanical, ready to push the car through quarter-mile runs that often dipped toward the mid-14-second territory. It was a simple formula, but on a car this light, It felt like holding a firecracker with wheels. And then there was the paint. Red, white, and blue stripes wrapped the body like a flag in motion. A rolling dare issued to anyone who thought AMC could not build a street-legal superstocker. Only a limited run left the factory, not nearly enough to satisfy the curiosity the car stirred. Those that survived the years bring more than nostalgia. They carry the echo of a moment when a small company proved that heart could matter just as much as horsepower. The 1970 Oldsmobile 442 W30 convertibles moves through muscle car history like a quiet question no one has fully answered. The W30 itself was real enough, a high-performance package built on Oldsmobile's big block 455, tuned for the kind of instant torque that could shove a heavy mid-size body forward with surprising grace. But the convertible version, the one that blended open sky with W30 force, exists mostly in fragments, scattered references, faded paperwork, and the memories of those who say they saw one long ago. Oldsmobile was chasing a different dream from its rivals. While others fought for louder headlines and quicker quarter miles, Oldsmobile wanted muscle wrapped in refinement. The W30 delivered that balance through a deep-breathing induction system, freer flowing exhaust, and careful engine tuning that gave the 455 a broad, confident surge. In a convertible shell, that character felt different. The wind softened the edges of the power, turning raw strength into something more like a long, rolling wave. No official record provides a clear count of how many W30 convertibles left the factory, and their absence from modern auctions only deepens the mystery. Some collectors insist a few were built for specific customers, while others believe they were engineering mules that slipped into private hands. Whatever the truth, the W30 convertible remains one of those rare echoes from an era when even the most powerful machines could disappear into the shadows, leaving behind only rumor, admiration, and a longing to know more. AMC Javelin SST presents itself with long, flowing lines and a Coke bottle curve that catches highlights like brushed metal in motion. Bright big bad colors amplify its confident shape, giving the car a stance that feels both athletic and refined. The bodywork seems to stretch forward with intent, as if the entire car were drawn toward the horizon. A 343 cubic inch V8 rests under the hood, delivering around 280 horsepower with a crisp, eager tone. Curb weight sits near 3,200 pounds, giving the SST a lively rhythm as it moves towards 60 miles per hour in just under 8 seconds. Quarter-mile strides in the mid-15-second range placed it squarely among the era's respected pony cars, even while carrying a more modest interior and a price that appealed to practical buyers. Rarity comes from context as much as production. The first model year produced just over 55,000 cars, modest compared to the immense waves of Mustangs and Camaros on American roads. Many early examples were modified, weathered, or simply worn away through decades of daily use, leaving original survivors significantly thin on the ground. A carefully restored Javelin SST now draws solid attention at auctions, its underdog charm and clean proportions earning appreciation from collectors who admire AMC's unique approach to performance design. And if you are still with us on this journey, leave a 5 in the comments so we know your passion is keeping pace with ours. Matador Machine wears its attitude openly, dressed in bright paint, bold stripes, VA decals that leave no doubt about its intentions. The midsize body carries a wide stance and a confident rake, giving the car the presence of a street fighter built for straight-line impact. Every surface seems designed to catch sunlight and turn it into a challenge. A 401 cubic inch V8 powers this rare creation, producing roughly 330 horsepower through a freer breathing exhaust. The engine's deep growl pushes the heavy frame with surprising authority. Quarter-mile runs fall into the high 14-second range, and the car stretches toward 130 miles per hour before running out of road. The old-school suspension and leaf-sprung rear may not carve corners gracefully, but in a straight burst, the Matador Machine speaks a language of pure force. True scarcity gives this AMC its near-mythical aura. Only a small handful were ever completed, the program ending abruptly as tightening emissions rules shut down the package almost as soon as it appeared. Many early cars were driven hard, repainted, or lost through time, leaving extremely few in anything close to original condition. A preserved Matador machine now stands as one of AMC's rarest statements of identity, a brief flash of power and color that continues to captivate collectors who treasure the most daring corners of American muscle history. The wild personality of the Matador machine makes the earlier Marlin feel like a completely different expression of AMC's imagination. Introduced in the mid-1960s, the Marlin carried a dramatic fastback shape traced across the modest Rambler Classic platform. The sweeping roofline flowed into a sharp tail, giving the car a poised, almost nautical elegance that set it apart from the era's upright sedans. Even at a standstill, the Marlin looked as if it were cutting through air. Engine choices ranged from the dependable 195 cubic inch six-cylinder to the stronger 343 cubic inch V8 producing close to 280 horsepower. Road tests of the time recorded sprints to 60 miles per hour in just under 8 seconds, impressive for a car weighing around 3,500 pounds. Despite its grace in a straight line, the blend of a long nose and shorter wheelbase created a peculiar balance that challenged handling in tight corners. Rarity today comes from its short life and modest demand. Over its entire run, slightly more than 17,000 examples were built, with the first model year responsible for more than half of that total. Many served as everyday transportation until rust or neglect quietly erased them. Surviving cars remind enthusiasts how boldly AMC experimented with form when others played safe. When a beautifully restored 1966 Marlin brings strong attention at auction, it confirms that this elegant outlier still holds a special place in the story of America's most unconventional automaker. AMC AMX3 stands as one of the boldest experiments ever attempted by the company, a supercar shaped with Italian precision and American ambition. Giorgetto Giugiaro penned the low and angular body, while the engineering brilliance of Giotto Bizzarini helped sculpt the mid-engine chassis beneath it. The result is a machine that feels more like a European thoroughbred than anything traditionally associated with Detroit metal. Its sharp lines and compact stance give it an intensity that demands attention even before the engine comes alive. A tuned 390 cubic inch V8 sits behind the seats, producing roughly 340 horsepower, and filling the cabin with a deep mechanical pulse. With weight kept under 3,000 pounds, early testing suggested the car could reach 60 miles per hour in a touch over 5 seconds, placing it among the world's serious performance machines of its era. Such capability, combined with its exotic layout, made the AMX3 far more advanced than anything AMC had ever placed on the road. Rarity borders on myth. Only a handful of prototypes were constructed, several built to full running condition and shaped by careful hand assembly. High development costs and complex construction halted any chance of mass production, leaving these few surviving cars scattered across private collections. Each example carries significant value, often reaching into the high six-figure range, and continues to remind enthusiasts that AMC once dared to chase a supercar dream far beyond its size or resources. AMC Gremlin X carries a shape that broke every rule of conventional styling, blending a chopped tail with an upright cabin to create one of the most recognizable silhouettes in American automotive history. What began as a compact answer to rising fuel concerns evolved into a personality car, confident in its odd proportions and proud of its place outside the mainstream. The short body and bold lines give the Gremlin X an energy that feels immediate and unfussy. Performance in the V8 version comes from the sturdy 304 cubic inch engine, giving the lightweight structure a surprising burst of enthusiasm. Reaching 60 miles per hour in roughly 10 seconds and brushing the 100 mile per hour mark, the car delivers far more excitement than its subcompact image suggests. The ride can turn lively on rough terrain, and the rear seating feels tight, yet these quirks have long been part of the Gremlin's charm. It was never designed to impress purists, only to create an honest and memorable driving experience. Rarity today emerges from survival rather than production. Hundreds of thousands filled American roads, but only a small fraction of Gremlin X models and Levi-trimmed editions remain in original condition. Many lived hard daily lives until rust or neglect slowly erased them. The cars that endure have earned strong five-figure bids at major auctions, proving that this quirky AMC has grown into a cult favorite treasured for its originality, character, and fearless individuality. AMC Eagle SS 4 steps into muscle history by refusing to follow the traditional formula. Instead of leaning on raw horsepower, it blends the stance of a compact hatchback with a full-time four-wheel drive system, creating a machine years ahead of the crossover movement. Raised ride height, chunky trim, and a purposeful cabin give it a rugged confidence that feels ready for every season and every forgotten backroad. Power begins with the durable 258 cubic inch straight six, an engine valued for its steady pull and long life. Later models introduced a smaller four-cylinder, yet the character of the SX4 remained rooted in its remarkable traction and calm behavior on rough surfaces. Reviewers of the period praised its balance in snow, gravel, and rain, noting that the car delivered a level of stability normally reserved for much larger off-road vehicles. Fuel economy and refinement lagged behind some competitors, but the Eagle's sure-footed nature earned a loyal following. Rarity developed as the years passed. The SX4 body style lasted only through the early portion of the Eagle line, and many examples spent their lives in harsh climates that slowly consumed them. Surviving cars often feel like preserved chapters from a period of bold experimentation. Well-kept examples have drawn strong five-figure interest at auction, reminding enthusiasts that AMC once crafted a pioneer that carried practicality, courage, and innovation in equal measure. These 20 machines remind us how thin the line can be between history and legend, between what survives and what simply fades into memory. If this journey through forgotten American muscle lit a spark for you, let it show. Like the video, share your thoughts, and subscribe to American Muscle Soul so you never miss the next ride.